Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast, brought to you by BetMGM. This is the Group of 5 Deep Dive. I'm Mike Calabrese, and I am joined by Mike Iannello, and I have three things I want to get into. Number one, was there a hotter man in the Action Network app than you, Mike, over the weekend? I believe you went 15-3-1 on your plays. Let me just ask you, did you go out and buy a lotto ticket? Did you roll that into NFL Week 1? Like, does the mojo keep going, or do you feel like that was too good to be true? 15-3-1? Like, that's incredible.
Just monster week. Of course, it did suck. FAU was my best bet. Of course, that was one of my three losses. Yeah, I think I won I think I started it was 8-0 after the noon slate. So already there, you're like, well, we're building something here, folks. And then I had a sweat law. I had a couple parlays, but I had one parlay that had Utah, Oregon, and Auburn in it. So just sweating all day. Pretty much gave it all back on Sunday, betting NFL, obviously. But yeah, it was one of the best Saturdays I've ever had. Just an absolute monster day.
Speaking of the Saturday slate, I have a little confession here. I actually love this slate on Saturday. When you and I were trading notes, you're like, this is one of the ugliest slates. I had 14 either plays or leans just from the Group of 5. That's how much I like this slate.
So not only the fact, so everyone listening, between Calabrese's confidence, I hate the slate. I have no confidence in my bets. And coming off 15-3, fade me and tail Calabrese this week.
Before we get into our G5 Hero of the Week, which is our favorite way to kick things off, I have one more little nugget to share, and that was a double dip. This is officially makes my weekend anytime this happens. Trent Dilfer loses, which was, the Georgia Southern, GATA, they just held up their end of the bargain. They dropped 49 points on his head. They forced 3 turnovers. And Chad Millman, the esteemed Chad Millman, was tailing me on that one. So I was feeling the pressure down the stretch. They get the turnover in the final minutes to end up sealing that game, covering. They win by 14. On top of that, I get Butch Don't Kill My Vibe turning into Butch Better Have My Money. Arkansas State gets rolled again. They lose 37-3. So you're the official math correspondent. 73-0 to Oklahoma, 37-3 to Memphis. That equals 110-3 in the first 2 weeks of the season for the Red Wolves. Is that correct?
Something like that. No, I listened back to the podcast. My math for that Oklahoma game made no sense. The 95% available yards made sense, but then my brain was like, 5 yards. I'm like, and I listened back, I'm like, that makes no sense, Mike. So I think someone even called me out on it. Yeah, not a math guy, clearly. But be honest, what made you feel, were you more excited about the UAB loss? The Chad tailing you, Chad winning money made you feel better than you winning money, correct?
Oh, 100%. I don't care. I don't care about my money. I told so many people. I was telling the sandwich guy at Wawa, you got to fade Trent Dilfer. And he was like, I'm just trying to make a bacon sizzly here, guy. Please stop with this UAB talk. Georgia Southern, I got to sing their praises even more. They went 10 for 13 on third down. Davis Brin was magnificent. I just love Statesboro. They are now, I believe, 20-11 as a favorite since moving up to FBS. They're just an absolute ATM. So I love what the Eagles gave us there.
No spoilers. I don't know your picks. UAB is a favorite this week, so we'll see.
I'll tease it out. I mentioned on X, on Twitter, that I had a little bit of a gem of a Trent Dilfer moment. Obviously, I watched the whole press conference. I sat down. I really enjoyed myself. And, just to see him squirming up there and say, I haven't lost in 2 years because he was coaching frickin' Tennessee high school football. No crap, Trent. So to see him have to eat it and then say some truly unhinged stuff like this, I can't even get into unpacking the mindset you have to be in to reference that your wife isn't quite as hot when you lose and your kids are more annoying. The amount of self-confidence, I go back and forth on this guy. I'm almost impressed by how strange he is. And the fact is, I'm going to fade him multiple times this season, and it's going to be great. And I know for a fact I'm going to get these press conferences, so it's phenomenal. All right.
Bad news for you, Trent. Your wife is going to be ugly by the end of this year.
We've delayed the G5 Hero of the Week long enough. I'm going to get this started real quick. If anyone was watching, and by anyone I mean the closest family members, maybe some friends, definitely not any girlfriends, no smoke shows, shout out to Trent Dilfer, watching Akron versus Morgan State. But my hero is Brian McCoy. Scoops up a fumble with under a minute to go as Morgan State is running out the clock, the game-winning TD. but it clued me into something that I was unfamiliar with, which is the turnover tire.
So
And for
good.
those who are not, rich on their Ohio history, Akron is the rubber city. Goodyear tire, that's where they make all this crap. They throw it over the guy's head, and he's walking around like it looks like he's like got a big chain on. It was incredible.
Two of them on.
Yeah, two of them. It was just like, what a great idea. And I know the Miami Hurricanes get a ton of crap for like the turnover chain. They started off a chain reaction of these turnover chains, and they just keep getting better at the G5 level. Like, I didn't think anyone could top the UNLV slot machine, but the Akron rubber tire around the neck, like, is so phenomenal. Like, I figured they'd go something kangaroo themes, like jump into the pouch like a Joey or something. But no, the tire was much better. I'm glad I left it to the sharper minds there in Akron. What was your G5 hero?
It's so perfectly Mac-tion too. It's just so perfectly Mac. My G5 hero of the week, I'm going with Rice running back Dalen Alexander with maybe my favorite stat line ever. 5 carries, 13 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just efficient as they come. If he ain't getting pay dirt, he don't want the ball. He had a 1-yard TD run in the second overtime and converted the 2-point conversion to give Rice a 43-41 overtime win over Houston, which makes it even better for the G5 hero because Houston abandoned us, so they're dead to us. So I have an even extra hate for the teams that left the G5 because they left us. They left our little family. And Dalen Alexander put him in the grave, probably put Hogo out of a job. So his seat's maybe the hottest in the country right now. So Dalen Alexander, you are my hero of the week. 5 carries, 3. That's like an old school like Mike Tolbert stat line. Love it. What a stat line.
I love that. Shout out to Stucky and Colin. I believe both of them were on Rice on the BBOC live show on Saturday.
Yep.
Talk about being an early investor in a team popping off. And now when they get into conference play, like, sky's the limit. This could be a 7 or 8 win Rice team.
JT Daniels looked good.
All right, we're going to get into best bets here. And you said you didn't like the slate. And I think I know why based on my best bet. You can't find it in your heart to back the Liberty Flames because they're not your team. You're not riding and dying in Conference USA. You're a Western Kentucky guy. I get that. But they're only a 3.5 point favorite at Buffalo. And this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because all of the offseason we talked about, Jamie Chadwell is a phenomenal coach. He's a brilliant offensive mind. Does he have a quarterback? You adamantly said they did not have a quarterback in that room. And I optimistically said they got like 4 guys in there. Maybe one will pop. Kaiden Salter is popping. He was a 4-star at high school, goes to Tennessee, gets thrown out for marijuana. It's like, what is this, 1967? Marijuana possession? But Tennessee's loss, Liberty's gain. He's looked really good, and he was, playing in limited action last year. Gets 2 starts here, track and field star, so he gives you that dual threat, element to his game. But honestly, no turnovers. 544 total yards, 6 TDs through 2 games. Does the double dip, completed the Quick Lane Bowl sweep, beating Bowling Green and New Mexico State in the first 2 weeks by double digits. And now here comes Buffalo. They're 0-2 on the year. We trashed them in the MAC preview. They just gave up 40 points to Fordham. Fordham's a good FCS school. I don't love the immediate bashing because of teams at the lower level. They're not trash. But to give up 40 points, that basically means you have no defense. And this was kind of their identity coming out of the Lance Leopold days. Like, they were trying to continue that last year with, Brandon Bailey, who's now down at Georgia Southern. The defense was right at the top for havoc in almost every single metric. 40 points to the Rams. Woof. So when I look at where they are now, they're 127th in total D, 105th in explosiveness allowed, almost dead last in PPA against the run, and Liberty can really run it. They got a dual threat, as I mentioned. They got a deep backfield. Chadwell has also faced Buffalo in the last 2 years at Coastal, so he knows the road trip. He knows Maurice Linguist inside and out. In 2001, they went on the road and won. Last year, they won by 12 at home, speaking of Coastal. So I think this is a great opportunity to get a really nice price on the Flames here. Buffalo's going to want to pass, and Liberty, they had to rework a lot of their defensive pieces with a new coaching staff coming in, a lot of transfers. They've looked really strong against the pass through 2 weeks. I understand it's Bowling Green, it's New Mexico State, but they're 12th in success rate when the ball's in the air. So I'm going to go ahead with Liberty here, lay the 3.5. I'd play this up to 5.5, 6, to be honest with you. I think this is completely mispriced. What is your thoughts on the co-favorite in Conference USA?
Well, Calabrese, I mentioned we don't share our picks ahead of time. So I may talk about this game a little bit later.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Then hit me up with your best bet of week 3.
Yeah, I'm going with Memphis. Minus 14.5 against Navy. It scares me. This line has moved away from me. I bet it at 16 earlier in the week. It's now 14.5, but that kind of indicates how much I actually like it. Yes, Memphis has played nobody this year. They played Bethune-Cookman and Arkansas State. So they played an FCS school and also Bethune-Cookman. And they have outscored them 93-17. So it's hard to take much away from FCS games, but like you better pump them. Hennigan's completed 73.8% of his passes, which has kind of been his MO for his whole 3 years. They have 4 really good running backs who are all running the ball, a super deep receiving room. Joseph Skates returned last week, which is big. Got a really nice touchdown pass. Like I said, I'm not taking much from the first 2 games, but it is worth noting Memphis currently ranks 5th in success rate, 4th in explosiveness, 4th in finishing drives, and 5th in havoc rate on defense. Their defense has looked awesome through 2 weeks. Again, big grain of salt, but if you play bad teams, I want you to shut them down, and they did. Kind of like I do most years. I just don't think Navy's very good. I'll be honest, I never do, and they don't look good this year. They got steamrolled by Notre Dame, which is somewhat understandable. Notre Dame looks awesome, but it was still way worse than we thought it would have been and should have been. 24-0 against Wagner is kind of just like They threw 13 passes in that game. Kind of weird. I still don't think they run the ball effectively. They run it a lot, but they're not really good at it. And Memphis was much better against the run than the pass last year. Their biggest issues came getting pressure on the quarterback and giving up big passing plays, neither of which are going to be an issue against Navy. And you look at in the past, last year Memphis beat them by 24. The year before that, they beat them by 18. Navy hasn't scored more than 24 against the Tigers since 2017. So they've had success stopping this triple option. I think Hennigan in this offense can pick apart the Navy defense, pull away here. I know the whole, service academy is catching more than 14. I'm sure Stocky will end up at Navy, which I always makes me nervous. Hopefully, right now it's at 14 and a hook at BetMGM. Hopefully, we'll get it to drop to an even 14. Like I said, I took it at 16. So at the end of the day, I really like this play. I don't think Navy's good, and I really like what I've seen from Memphis.
All right, let's climb into the trust tree here for a moment. If 100% is your confidence in this bet because of Memphis's ability on offense, and 0% is because you think that Navy is in a true year 0 rebuild, where do you move that sliding scale? Are you fading Navy more, or are you backing Memphis because you believe in the natural step the offense has taken in year 3 of Seth Hennigan?
Probably more backing Memphis, to be honest with you. I think it's probably 60-40, 60 backing Memphis, 40 fading Navy.
Okay, I think that's fair. And to be honest, I mean, I get that you have to discount a little bit of what Memphis has done, but it's not as though we don't have a sample size of Seth Hennigan running this offense for years. So I do think it's worthwhile to point out that the running back room looks great. All the things that you mentioned, I think I'm going to end up tailing you, particularly if it gets to 14. So I agree on that point. Now we turn to the G5 High Five. This is our round robin here for week 3. We're going to give you 5 picks, package them together however you like. The round robins, you can do them by 2s, by 3s. There's lots of different ways to make these profitable. It also gives you an opportunity not to get stuck losing that last leg of a parlay and then being left with nothing. So you go 4-1 on these, you can really, make some good money. So let's get started. You're doing heavy lifting this week. Ianello, you have 3 of the 5 picks. What do you have for the first one?
Well, Calabrese, give me Liberty. Give me Liberty.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I was like, I don't know. I don't think this guy can do Buffalo. I don't think he can pull the trigger.
So this might be a total square play because I know Buffalo lost to Fordham. You lose an FCS team. It's like, don't bet against them. It's kind of square, and of course they're bad.
I mean, speaking of a spoiler, I'm gonna kind of piggyback off the FCS doesn't mean anything to the next week game, but we'll get there in a moment.
Perfect. But you mentioned it. I bet Buffalo's team total under. I didn't think they were good before the year, and Fordham didn't really change my opinion. You mentioned it. Yeah, Fordham's a good FCS team, but they also have a new offensive coordinator. They have a new quarterback because Fagnano's at UConn. He just got hurt, which sucks. And they went into Buffalo and dropped 40 points on him. Montez threw for 309 yards and 5 touchdowns. And when you think about, I was so in love with this Bulls team with Lance Leipold. I bet them every week. And they did 2 things exceptionally well. Run the ball with Jarrett Patterson and create a ton of havoc with their D-line. And they're horrible at both. 3.6 yards per carry. I don't think Cole Snyder's good. Their offense is 132nd in explosiveness, 110th in finishing drives. And you mentioned Liberty hasn't played a ton of teams, but they got the job done. And you said it, Salter, never going to be an elite passer. If he can give me 2 touchdowns and no picks every game, we're gonna win 10 or 11 games. And the one area Liberty has struggled is giving up explosiveness, but Buffalo can't create big plays. So like, I'm not really worried about that. Who cares? I know this is a square play because it kind of looks too good to be true. I know Stucky's on Buffalo, which I hate. I know Liberty is a cult, which I also hate, but I just trust Jamie Chadwell to get this done. I think the Flames are more than 4 points better than Buffalo. So give me Liberty.
All right, I'm going to go from a big game like Liberty Buffalo to one, off the radar a little bit. Alabama's only laying 32 at South Florida. I don't see this. To be honest, like I was expecting it to be basically a carbon copy of the Middle Tennessee line. And there's going to be an article dropping on Wednesday morning in the Action app. I'm basically going through all the historical data on Nick Saban losing as a top 6 team early in the season. What happens after that? I'll just spoil it right here. The Zombie Tide are a serious thing. And this goes back actually to his time at LSU as well. 53-7 straight up, 34-26 against the spread. The last 3 years that they lost early at Alabama, 2015, 2021, 2022. The Tide won the national championship in 2015. They appeared in the college football title game in 2021 against Georgia after whipping the Bulldogs at full strength in the SEC title game. And then in 2022, last year, you saw what happened. But still, even with last year having some issues post the Tennessee loss, they still, in that 3-year stretch, that 3 sample sizes of seasons, 25-2 straight up and a profitable 15-12 mark against the closing number. The Bama Texas game is interesting to me because I think this is a little bit of an overreaction to it, where it's like Alabama looks mortal. They don't have that fear factor. Texas came in, according to Bud Elliott, with the 7th best roster from a blue chip ratio in the entire country. And I believe 24/7 Sports, it's an identical 7th ranking in terms of team composite score, in terms of their overall talent. Plus, they have Quinn Ewers, who, even though he's only played 14, 15 games in college, I felt like that was his moment to finally break through. He was one of the highest rated high school passers in the history of recruiting services. So it's not like Alabama rolled over and lost to Kentucky on the road or something like that. And then I look at this particular game. The one thing that popped out to me, I try to look at the positives when there's a lot of negative narratives going around. Alabama's run defense looked great against Texas. When it came to their running backs, they gave up 3.1 yards per carry on 29 carries. They only gave up 1 carry of over 10 yards to a running back from Texas. So USF in year 1, year 0, whatever you want to call it, it's a rebuild. They're going to get dump trucked in this game. And Alabama hammered Middle Tennessee. I like Middle Tennessee more than I like this USF team, so I'm not going to overthink it. And the final piece of it is I think we're going to see 2 or 3 quarterbacks from Bama here, and not in the just go out and run the vanilla offense. I think they want to get a little bit of a look just in case they want to go to Buckner or they want to go to Ty Simpson. So I think you're going to get a motivated Milroe. I think he's going to play well coming off of his 2 interception performance. And I think the bench players are just going to eat in this game in front of let's call it like 20,000 max, in Tampa. It's not much of a home field advantage. So Bama, I play this all the way up to 34.5. What are your thoughts on a huge number with an Alabama team that really needs to get off the mat with some big games coming up on their schedule?
Yeah, I think, the fear of these Power 5 teams covering big numbers tends to be like, all right, do they get up big in the first half and then not throw the ball in the second half?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Bama can't throw the ball anyway. If Bama has 0 pass attempts, they'll win this game by 50. So if they're just like going to run the ball all day, that's almost better for you in this case. Like just let Milroe run the spread option or the read option all day and like don't ever let him throw the ball. I think that actually helps you a little bit too.
All right, what is your next entry to our round robin?
All right, I mentioned it, the G5 hero against Houston. I'm doing it again. You're dead to us, Cincinnati. Give me Miami, Ohio, plus 14.5. Look, Cincinnati got a big win last week against Pitt. Good for them. Everybody knows Pat Narduzzi, as a favorite, is basically the worst coach in football history. He's a moron, so I'm not really giving him that much credit for that. Djokovic looked terrible. Even in that game, since he had just a 38% success rate, they ran the ball well, but Emory Jones had just 125 passing yards. Yes, that Emory Jones is somehow still in college. He's Cincinnati's quarterback. In 6 years at 3 different schools, he has 40 touchdowns and 19 interceptions. I don't think he's very good at all. Defense did really well on a per play basis, but Pitt had 8 explosive plays in that game. And Pitt might be the least explosive team in the country, in Buffalo. And, even Eastern Kentucky had 5 explosive plays against Cincinnati. So, through 2 games, they rank 119th in defending explosiveness against 2 teams you should not have any big plays to. Meanwhile, Miami, Ohio ranks 14th in the country in explosiveness on offense, especially through the air. Gabbert, we talked about him a lot in the preview show. I love Gabbert. Sure, they struggled against Miami, Florida, but that loss looks even better now. The Hurricanes scored more points on Texas A&M than they did on the Redhawks. So score one for the real Miami up in Ohio. They boat raced a UMass team that everybody thinks has improved. They had 8.4 yards per play in that one. Gabbert, 284 yards, 4 touchdowns. Gabe Larvadain had 9 catches for 248 yards and 3
Gage
scored.
Larvadain is leading the nation in receiving yards, and yet there's some guys that have played 3 games behind him. So even spotting them a game, he had a 99-yard touchdown against UMass. Like, the kid's an electric factory coming up from the FCS level. I think it was Southeast Louisiana. Just a great story, and they needed him. And you look at, Mac Hippenhammer, some of these guys at Miami of Ohio over the years have been phenomenal. Usually we have to wait until Tuesdays in November for it to show, but Larvadain has come out on fire, and he had 80 yards against the Miami Hurricanes. So it's not like he's going to get shut down by the Cincinnati defense.
Yeah, UMass had 280 yards. They scored on a block punt, so it looked a little closer than it really was. Miami, Ohio was my pick to win the MAC before the season. They have a great defense. They're really strong against the run, which again is kind of Cincinnati's MO. I trust Gabbert to stay within this number. It's also a great spot. The Bearcats are coming off a big win on the road at Pitt, and next week is their Big 12 debut against Oklahoma. So this is a brutal sandwich spot for them. 14.5, especially getting that hook. Give me Miami, Ohio.
I love it. I'm going to go with another MAC team here. Fire up the Admiral Akbar. It's a trap. We got Notre Dame looking ahead to Ohio State. If there was ever a game to just be like, we're killing everybody, we just smoked NC State onto Ohio State's film, Central Michigan stinks, fire up chips, baby. Plus 34.5. Listen, Central Michigan's offense looked awesome against an FCS opponent last week, but it was an FCS playoff team for last year. They're ranked 11th in the FCS rankings, and after the loss, they didn't move because everybody at that level of football knows that New Hampshire can play. And essentially, if you are a playoff FCS team, it's like a minor bowl team. So, to me, I think it should be viewed in that way. And I look at it as I wanted to see the Central Michigan offense put it all together, and they did. Emmanuel did his running thing. They ran for 236 as a team. He had some home run plays outside the pocket. Like, that I love.
But he threw 2 touchdowns.
He threw 2 touchdowns, which is the big element of it. It's like at least they're taking shots because by the time he breaks, 2 or 3 big runs and they're moving the ball, moving the sticks with the running game, you have to respect it. You have to bring 7 or 8 guys in the box. And I brought it up in the offseason talking about Tom Herman. Like, FAU, I think, got an incredible, discount to get somebody of his talent. Jim McElwain, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of his, but I thought to myself, I'm like, maybe he got like a little bit of a raw deal at Florida. We're going to do a little quick trivia here. Obviously, he got fired from Florida. Do you know what his record in the SEC was when he left? In 24 games, how many of those do you think he won?
16.
16-8. You were correct, sir. Like, I'm sure the Florida Gators would love to have a coach who wins, 2/3 of his SEC games. And then since he arrived with the chips, they're the best betting team at the window in the MAC. They covered huge spreads last year against their 2 ranked opponents. They're catching 21 against Oklahoma State. That was sweat-free. They're catching 28 at Penn State, another sweat-free, win there. So I don't know. I just see this as a big number, a look-ahead spot if there ever was one for Notre Dame. And the Michigan State game, I went back and I watched some of the highlights. I had a small bet on the chips in that one. It was 10-7 at half. They were gutting it out. They were trying their best to stay in the game. And that included getting stopped at the Michigan State 2 and an interception by Emmanuel Jr. at the Michigan State 30. So that's a game that could have been closer. They could have covered. I think you're getting great value here. I price it at like 29.5, 30. So to get it almost at 34.5, usually I don't like to talk about buying points in college football, but just treat yourself. Just go to minus 145 or whatever and take it over the 5 touchdowns. If it doesn't get there, it doesn't steam up. I love the chips here. I love Bert Emanuel Jr. Let's do it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to run up the score, McIlwain sounds Irish, right? They got to let off the
Yeah,
gas a little bit late for
exactly.
your good old Irish boy. I hate doing this. I'm sorry, Minor Nation. This might become a weekly thing. Give me Arizona minus 17. Breeze, I think we saw this team quit on Dana Dimmel last week. I think this is going to
You
be.
see Dana Dimmel in the press conference? I'm just obsessed with press conferences as well. But he
Well, I
apologized.
have a job. I don't watch press conferences all day on my Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean that's my job. Essentially, he apologized to Hardiman or Hardison.
Partisan.
He said that like he screwed up. It was his play calling. Like he hasn't put him in a position to win. And
Yeah,
then
no
Kai
shitting Dana.
Loxley comes out of the hedges like Homer Simpson, and he's like, "Where was my apology when I was playing on a broken ankle like 4 years ago?" It was like unbelievable the amount of like hate he was getting from former players, but then also kind of like at least he's owning up to the fact that he's not a good coach. If there was only a media personality who loved Penn State and was in the Philadelphia area who has been beating the drum that this guy cannot coach for years. So I give you kudos. You tried your best to talk me out of UTEP last week. I was stubborn. I thought Northwestern was really bad. Not relatively speaking, UTEP is garbage. So
They went into that game. They went into that half tied 7-7, and they got their doors blown off. Northwestern outscored them 31-0 in the second half alone. The Wildcats might not score 31 points the rest of the season. You mentioned it. Hardison was terrible. Whoever's fault it was. Dana Dimmel could apologize all he wants. He's not like gonna magically just be better next week. Like, I'm sorry I sucked. I'll be better next week. They can't run the ball. Dana is so bad at finishing drives, converting third downs, all the little things, right? Everything that you can look at and be like, that's the coach's fault. They're bad at. They don't pick up big plays. How is this team supposed to score? Arizona's 16th in the country in success rate on offense. They're 25th on defense. They just went to Mississippi State and took the Bulldogs to overtime. They should have won that game. They dominated that game. They outgained Mississippi State 416 to 268. Jaden Delora had 336 yards against an SEC defense. He is going to shred UTEP. The problem was he threw 4 picks. I don't expect that against this Miners team. He knows he cost his team the game last week. I'm banking on a big bounce back from him. They had a 50% success rate on offense against Mississippi State. Regardless of what you think of their defense, they're an SEC team. They're going to crush UTEP. Also, Jacob Cowing revenge game. Former Miner is going to light up his old defense, especially if you talked about former players. If they don't like Dana Dimmel, what do you think Cowing's going to do? Bet the farm on him to score Saturday responsibly. Actually, we don't even take. Do we ever take player props on this? Can I throw a Jacob Cowing anytime touchdown? Can I make that my best bet? Change my best bet to Jacob Cowing touchdown. Arizona's first in the country in EPA against the run. If they take away this UTEP rushing game and they make Hardison throw it around, it's going to get ugly. He's going to need some more apologies. Minor Nation, I might be fading you every single week, and I apologize. I love you. It'll get better soon. We'll be back on your team. But for now, the Pac-12 is a wagon. Give me Arizona.
This is exciting for me. This is the first time in the season I get to ask you this. So what's the number that you got for Arizona?
17.
Okay. Where would you tease it up to on the alternate line? Like where does your imagination, like the
24?
edge of your imagination in this blowout?
24.
24. Okay. So
I mean, what did Northwestern beat them by? I know you can't really do the transitive property. Yeah. Like Northwestern beat them by 30. What would you have UTEP and Northwestern power rated? 10 points, maybe.
Probably not that certainly much. If I move it, that's 7 points. Books are pretty stingy about this. They probably give you like plus 215. I think it's worth it because I think narrative speaking,
and it's the quit factor. If they have quit, Arizona beats them by 40.
Yeah.
If they hang tight, they probably still win by 20.
Yeah, McMillan and Cowing on the perimeter, they got no answers for those guys. Those guys are absolute capital D dudes. They're going to have huge games. They're both going to be playing on Sundays at some point. McMillan probably as like a second round pick. Like that's the kind of talent that he has. I still can't believe they got him to come to Tucson. Like I don't know how the coaching staff pulled that off, but kudos to them. And I agree, Pac-12 is a wagon, so let's lean into it a little bit. All right, we're going to wrap the show here with our Underdog Moneyline Parlay. Last year, I was just way off the mark with my games. I mean, I was taking underdogs that were losing by 35 points. I've been so close. I believe I lost by 3.
Was that a shot at me with UConn?
That was not a veiled shot. That was a direct shot for me. That was a little friendly fire on my side. week one, I had Akron. They lost by 3. They blew a 14-point lead on the road to Temple. And then I had Boise last week, and that game couldn't have been like script-wise how I envisioned it would go. Unfortunately, John Rice Plumlee gets hurt, but I did figure there was a chance that like something weird was going to happen with him, either bad play or injury. Came to fruition. They couldn't cash that ticket for me. So before we get into this, just a reminder that BBOC is brought to you by BetMGM. This is the Group of 5 deep dive. And a reminder on the programming front that Stuckey and Colin will be back this week with their full FBS buffet, every single meaningful game. They'll go through the trash picks. They'll go through, the top of the card. Nothing left, no stone left unturned when it comes to those two guys. And on Saturdays, BBOC live show, I'll do a tape segment that I'll give out my best bet in G5 land, and then Brett, Colin, and Stuckey cut it up live, talking all the latest news for injuries, availability, weather, everything that's going to impact those final decisions that you're making, as well as a market report in terms of steam and line movement and all that good stuff. All right, so on to the money line parlay here. I'm going to get started with a team that's, after their first game, their quarterback gets hurt, and then their second game, they lie to us. They say he's going to play, and then he doesn't play. I'm like, I am done with the Ohio Bobcats. Well, that is a lie, because I am back in on the Bobcats over Iowa State here. Curtis Rourke, I think that was the rust game. He got it out of the system. I think he's ready. But more importantly, just going to ask this open-ended question. Is Ohio's defense really good? Because they're 25th in quality drives on D. They're 15th in havoc. They're 36th in tackling, according to PFF. They've only given up 30 points on the whole season, and that's playing two likely bowl teams, in my opinion, San Diego State and FAU. That's a quality win to go into Boca Raton and to win against an Owls team. They had 9 TFLs in that game, so they're flying around, they're making plays. And Iowa State, this looks like an emotional letdown game to me. Like, they just gave the game away to an Iowa team. Like, when you're down 17-0 to the Iowa Hawkeyes, like, you may as well make it like 45-0 to a regular team. They fought back, they clawed in that Cyhawk game, and they couldn't get out of the hole. Now you have an 11 a.m. body clock game for them, a sleepy start against a G5 team that's hosting a Power 5 team. I think their crowd will be pumped up. I think if Ohio gets any positivity early, it's going to snowball. And I'm going to put my faith in, the Maple Missile and see Bangura to get it going. I know he's had a slow start to the season, but I think the fact that we're getting plus money here, I'm going to tack it onto this parlay and hope for the best.
I don't hate it. Wiggles still doesn't look 100%.
Right.
I watched every snap of this game, and it was horrific. Florida Atlantic had so many chances to win this game. You mentioned it. I'm not totally sure if it's like the FAU offensive line was an issue, but Thompson was under pressure every snap. He couldn't get anything going. He had guys open, they would drop it. So I don't know if Ohio just wrecks havoc or if FAU is just worse than I thought, but it was so frustrating. But I'm glad you took a G5 against the Power 5, because we are the G5 boys, and I unfortunately have to do the opposite. I said the Pac-12's a wagon. Give me Arizona State plus 135. I just think there's a lot of uncertainty in this game. Arizona State against Fresno State at home. Look, Arizona State has not looked good at all through 2 games, but they were breaking in a completely new coaching staff, new head coach, new system, true freshman quarterback. I think Jaden Rashada showed flashes of extreme upside, his talent level. He's also shown he's a true freshman in a new offense. So I think it's going to take time. Running games look fine, Scatabo and Brooks, but passing attack needs to get clicking. They have pretty good weapons. Again, I just think they need time. And the defense has looked fine. I trust Kenny Dillingham. Obviously, what he did at Oregon, obviously it was against Georgia, but their offense was horrific the first game, and then it was humming by the end of the year. I trust him to get things fixed. Give Rashada more time. Drew Pine's back. I don't really want him to play, but at least that gives them an experienced safety blanket if Rashada struggles out the gate. Fresno State has won 2 super close games so far. A close win over Purdue looks good, but a close win over Eastern Washington does not. And I still have questions about the ceiling of this Bulldogs team. Keen at quarterback is still just a guy to me. They're still replacing so many weapons. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in this game, so that's why I wouldn't play the spread, just because I haven't liked what I've seen from Arizona State. But I think if they play their talent level and Dillingham can get this offense to, operate his system, I'm getting a Pac-12 team as an underdog at home. So I like the upside more of the Sun Devils. So give me Arizona State plus 135.
And kind of an underrated, raucous place to play. A lot of weird things happen, in Tempe.
I'm riding with the 2 Arizona schools.
Yeah, it's just like I remember in college they had a game where it was a blackout and most of their fans just had t-shirts that said we know how to black out. And I was like, that's Arizona State leaning into their culture, leaning into their fan experience. It's kind of like the Ole Miss of Arizona. Like they're there for a party. And if things get going early, I think it's a positive opportunity. As you said, it's such a young team. You know, they've not soured on the new coach. They've certainly not soured on the young quarterback. He comes in as one of the most highly touted quarterback recruits in the entire country. So I get the upside of this play. And I agree. Fresno State, it's like, do we really know how good Purdue is? And not yet. Where it's going to take a couple months to really figure out what kind of team they're going to be. Are they going to be a 4-8 team or kind
They're
of
a
a
home dog against Syracuse this week. So
yeah, so we're going to find out what that win really means in the coming weeks, but I think it's an opportunity to take advantage of like a bit of a market inefficiency there, and it's a rare opportunity to get Power 5 team at home as a dog. So let's pair those two up, and hopefully we can get off the schneid here and hit one of these, and really sweeten the pot of picks that we're putting out here.
So before we sign off, I had two quick games I just wanted to ask you about really quick to get your opinion on. One, I almost took this as my underdog, but like you said, we've had a rough stretch, so I'm trying to play it a little safe versus swinging for the fences. If I was going to swing for the fences, San Jose State plus 275 against Toledo. I know a Toledo team you don't love. Toledo as a favorite tends to not be profitable. I still like the upside of Cordero. What are your thoughts on that one?
That was a game I almost picked too, just because I believe in Cordero. I believe in their head coach. I mean, is he like the nicest coach in America? Like, he's just so positive. Like every time like he comes on screen, no matter what's happening with San Jose State, I'm like, it's gonna be okay. I'm just like, no, he's not talking to me. He's talking to his players. Like he just has that calming, like third grade teacher energy where it's like, everybody just sit down on the carpet. We're gonna read a book. It's gonna be okay. So like, no matter what happens in this game, it's so rare in college that I absolutely trust a guy to right the ship, and he's one of them. It's just, what Cordero do we get? Because he's going to need to ball out to win this game against a Toledo team that has better talent. But I've seen him do it in the last 2 years. He's looked pretty damn good. So I think that's an interesting play. Maybe
also, maybe when you asked how nice he is, maybe our producer can cut in a clip of Colin talking about media day and meeting him down there. I'm sure he did.
Yeah,
the other one I've seen a lot of plays. I believe both Colin and Stuckey are on it. Everyone fading your boy Pavia, New Mexico State. Are we still a Pavia podcast, or are you switching to the other side of the New Mexico State rivalry in this one?
We're still a Pavia podcast, but you can't make me bet every G5 game. Like, I'll just do that on my own. You can't force me to do that.
I just want your thoughts.
Yeah, I need some space after the way that he played in that week 0 opener against UMass. That was painful. I probably need a whole month. There's no juice for me for this New Mexico State rivalry. I know they have a rivalry name. I think it's the Rio Grande Valley rivalry or something. I don't care. Sure. There's too many good games. Like, one that was on the cutting room floor for me, Southern Miss catching 11 against its.
I had that written down. It's like 12.5 now. I don't think Pratt's playing, so I think it's going up.
Right. I mean, the Nasty Bunch, I know that Florida State dropped a nuclear bomb on them last week, but like, Florida State may be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the whole country. So like, I don't really care about that data set. Like, I understand that we lost that as a bonus bet and didn't go down valiantly in that fight, but all the reasons I like Southern Miss are still there. So the fact that it's double digits, I think, is great. And really, the only other one that I will put my name to as a bonus bet, Colorado State, Colorado. The total here was off by 7 points for my projection. It's sitting at 59. Like, we saw Colorado State in the opener, and
I don't think Millen's playing.
Well, even if Millen doesn't play, I believe that Colorado could score 45 points in this game. So the question is, can Colorado State, with their skill positions and how weak the Buffaloes are up front, potentially to run the ball a little bit, like, can I get 17 or 20 points out of the Rams? Because if so, I think this is going to blow past this number. So that's my bonus bet on the total. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, like I said, Millen not playing scares me. It's Fowler, Nicolsi. Yeah, like, I mean, you said it. If you get, I think what's going to help you is Dion makes it very clear he wants Shador and Travis Hunter in the playoff picture, or the Heisman picture. So in terms of other teams, if Colorado's up 50-0, sure, they probably don't play Travis Hunter 125 snaps. Do you think he pulls his son if they're up, or does he let him throw for 6 touchdowns? Like,
I mean, I've watched every one of their games, every snap. I don't even know who their backup quarterback is. They haven't shown that kid once. Talk about like the least visibility
I
on the
mean,
whole Colorado team. So
when in his opening press conference he goes, "There's your quarterback." Why would anyone transfer in there to be not the
right,
quarterback?
exactly.
Well, I assume the kid stinks, so it's and like Deion makes it clear, Shedeur, he wants him in the Heisman Trophy. So I think he probably lets him cook this whole game. So that'll certainly help your over.
For Mike Iannello, I'm Mike Calabrese. This has been the Group of Five Deep Dive under the BBOC banner. A reminder on the programming front that you can catch Colin and Stuckey giving their full cards on Thursday. So be sure to update your podcast feed there. And as always, please subscribe, comments. We had a listener comments last week. I threw in a 3-teamer parlay for $10 for him. Happy to do it. Just give us a 5-star shout out. These rating means a lot. They did not come close to winning. No, not. I believe UConn Moneyline was there, but it was my real American dollars. So I'm more than happy to subsidize some of these wild parlay dreams. So that's it for us this week. Best of luck on Saturday. And before you know it, we're going to have something I'm really excited about this year, which is Conference USA midweek action, MACtion. Like, there's going to be so much good conference play in October and November. So try to cherish these, Saturdays where the slate is basically 85-90% full, because you're going to be stretching your attention moving forward. All right, guys, have a good one and best of luck.